My name is Clara Bennett and I'm 30 years old. 7 years ago, my sister told my parents I dropped out of medical school and became a drug addict. She lied, and that single lie cost me my entire family. They cut me off. They blocked my number. They skipped my residency graduation. They weren't at my wedding. For 7 years, I was no one's daughter. Then last month, my sister was rushed into the emergency room, her chest crushed, her lungs filling with blood, dying. The trauma team paged the attending physician. The doors burst open, and when my mother saw the name stitched on the teal scrubs walking toward her daughter's trauma bay, she grabbed my father's arm so hard it left bruises. Before we get into this, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you are right now. Now, let me take you back to the spring of 2018, to a hospice room in suburban Philadelphia, and the last time my father ever looked at me with anything resembling respect. Growing up, there were 2 daughters in the Bennett house, but only one who mattered. My sister Ivy is 3 years younger. She came out of the womb performing dance recitals, cheerleading competitions, the girl who could light up any room and make every adult adore her. My parents, Michael and Karen Bennett, suburban Philadelphia, upper-middle-class professionals, adored her for it. Dad was a corporate attorney. Mom ran her own real estate agency. They valued 2 things above all else, image and achievement, but only the kind that looked good in Christmas cards. Ivy delivered both flawlessly, every single day. I was the quiet one. The one with her nose in Grey's Anatomy at family dinners while Ivy held court at the table. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't difficult. I was simply invisible. There's a difference between being forgotten and never being seen in the first place. Here's a small example. Junior year of high school, I was accepted into a competitive summer research program at Penn Medicine, the only student from our school. Same weekend, Ivy made captain of the varsity cheer squad. One guess which event my parents attended. When I came home with a letter of recommendation from the program director, Dad glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Clara." He didn't ask what my research was about. He never did. I told myself it didn't hurt. I told myself I didn't need the attention. I poured everything into my grades, my MCAT prep, my applications. I figured if I couldn't be the daughter they noticed, I'd be the daughter they couldn't ignore. And for one brief shining moment, I was. The day I got accepted into the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, something shifted. For the first time in my life, my father looked at me, really looked at me, and said 6 words I'd waited 22 years to hear. But I'll get to that. First, you need to understand what Ivy did when she realized the spotlight was moving. The acceptance letter came on a Thursday in March. I remember because Ivy was home for spring break. She was 19, a sophomore at a state school studying communications. Fine major, fine grades. Fine was Ivy's ceiling, though she'd never admit it. Dad read the letter at the kitchen table. His eyebrows went up. Penn Medicine, he said slowly, like he was tasting the words. That's a top 5 program. Then he looked at me. Maybe you'll actually make something of yourself, Clara. It wasn't a compliment. Not really. But it was the closest thing to one I'd ever gotten from him. And I held on to it like oxygen. Mom called my Aunt Linda that night. She called her college roommate. She called 3 neighbors. Clara got into Penn Medicine, she said, and I could hear the surprise in her voice even through the wall. The phone call that came 3 weeks later changed everything. It was my grandmother, my dad's mother, the woman who had actually raised me in all the ways that mattered. She called on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my apartment, studying for finals. "Clara," she said, and I heard it immediately. The tremor in her voice. The weight. "I need you to come home. The doctor says it's stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They're saying 6 months, maybe less." My grandmother, Dorothy Bennett, was 76 years old. She'd been a nurse for 40 years before she retired. She was the one who bought me my first anatomy coloring book when I was 8. The one who drove me to every science fair, every academic competition, every hospital volunteer shift. The one who told me I could be a doctor when my own parents barely noticed I existed. I didn't hesitate. I called the medical school the next morning and requested a leave of absence. They approved it immediately. Family medical emergencies were standard protocol. I'd defer my start until the following year. I packed 2 suitcases and moved into my grandmother's small house in Drexel Hill to become her full-time caregiver. My parents thought it was excessive. She has hospice nurses, my mother said. You're putting your entire future on hold. But my grandmother didn't have 6 months. She had 4. And I spent every single day of those 4 months with her. I learned to manage her pain medications, to help her bathe, to read to her when she was too weak to hold a book. I held her hand through the worst of it. And when she died on a humid July morning, it was my face she saw last. I was 22 years old, and I'd just lost the only person who had ever truly seen me. The funeral was small. My parents attended, stiff and awkward in the front pew. Ivy didn't come, she was too devastated and stayed at a friend's beach house instead. After the burial, my father shook my hand like I was a business associate and said, "Well, that's done. When do you start medical school?" "January," I said. I deferred. He nodded. "Good. Don't waste any more time." That was August. By November, my entire world had collapsed. The phone call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in my grandmother's house, now technically mine, left to me in the will, packing up her things and preparing to move closer to campus for the January start. My father's name lit up my phone. "Dad?" I answered, surprised. He never called. "We know the truth about what you've become, Clara." His voice was ice. No greeting. No preamble. My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about? Don't insult me by lying." "Ivy told us everything. The pills. The dropped classes. The fact that you're not even enrolled anymore. She tried to protect you, but we finally got the whole story out of her." "What?" I was standing now, my heart pounding. "Dad, none of that is true. I took a leave of absence to take care of Grandma Dorothy. I'm starting in January. I can send you the. Save it." His voice cut through me like a scalpel. "We've already contacted the school. They confirmed you're not currently enrolled. And Ivy showed us the photos." "What photos?" I was shaking now. "Of you. At parties. Looking unwell." He said it with such disgust. "Your mother is devastated. I don't know what happened to you, but we can't have this in our lives. We have Ivy's reputation to think about. Her future." "Dad, please, let me explain. I can prove. We're done, Clara. Don't contact us again." The line went dead. I stood there in my grandmother's kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, unable to breathe. I called back immediately. Straight to voicemail. I called my mother. Blocked. I called again. And again. Nothing. I sent emails. I sent certified letters with my deferral paperwork, my leave of absence approval, my grandmother's death certificate. Every single one came back unopened, marked return to sender. I drove to their house 3 days later. My father opened the door, looked at me like I was a stranger, and said, "If you come back here again, I'll call the police." Then he shut the door in my face. It took me 2 weeks to piece together what Ivy had done. She'd told them I'd dropped out of medical school before it even started. That I'd gotten into drugs during my gap year. That the leave of absence was a cover story. She'd even fabricated text message screenshots, God knows how, showing me asking her for money for pills. She'd taken photos of me from my grandmother's funeral, where I looked exhausted and hollow-eyed from grief and 4 months of caregiving, and told them I was high. My sister had burned down my entire life. And my parents had believed her without question. What I didn't know then, what I wouldn't find out until 7 years later, standing in a hospital waiting room in bloodstained scrubs, was why. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what happened next. Let me tell you how I survived. I grew up in a house where love was a performance review, and I never learned the script. We lived in Portland, Oregon, not the trendy part with the food carts and the bookstores, but the sprawling suburbs where every house looked identical and every family pretended to be perfect. My father, Michael Bennett, was a partner at a corporate law firm downtown. My mother, Karen, ran the most successful real estate agency in our zip code. They were the kind of people who measured success in square footage and college acceptance letters. Ivy was born when I was 3. I don't remember being an only child, but I've seen the photos, me in my mother's arms, her smile genuine and unguarded. Then Ivy arrived, and it was like someone turned on a spotlight that I didn't know existed. Suddenly, I was standing in the dark. Ivy didn't cry as a baby. She performed. Even her tantrums were theatrical, big tears, trembling lip, the kind of distress that made adults rush to comfort her. By the time she was 5, she'd figured out that the world would rearrange itself around her if she just demanded it loudly enough. I learned the opposite lesson. I learned that if I was quiet, if I didn't need anything, if I just handled things myself, everyone would be happier. Ivy did ballet, then gymnastics, then dance team, then cheerleading. She was always center stage, literally. Our living room was a shrine to her achievements, trophies on the mantle, ribbons on the wall, framed photos of her mid-leap in her sparkly costumes. My parents attended every single performance, every competition, every awards ceremony. I volunteered at the Children's Hospital. Every Saturday morning, starting when I was 14, I'd take 2 buses to Emmanuel Medical Center and spend 4 hours in the pediatric ward. I'd read to the kids, play games with them, help the nurses organize supply closets. It wasn't glamorous. No one took photos. But there was a little girl named Sophie, 6 years old, leukemia, who would light up when she saw me. "Clara's here," she'd shout, and for those 4 hours, I mattered to someone. I mentioned it once at dinner. I'd just finished telling Sophie the entire plot of Charlotte's Web, and she'd fallen asleep holding my hand. I was so full of that moment that I thought maybe, just maybe, my parents would want to hear about it. "That's nice, honey," my mother said, not looking up from her phone, where she was reviewing listing photos. My father cut his steak. "Community service looks good on college applications." Across the table, Ivy rolled her eyes. "God, Clara, do you have to make everything about sick kids? It's depressing." That night, they went to Ivy's dance recital. I stayed home and finished my AP biology homework. The pattern was set. Ivy shone. I studied. And our parents had made their choice about which daughter deserved their attention long before either of us understood what was at stake. The acceptance email from the Perelman School of Medicine arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday in March. I was sitting in the campus library, supposedly studying for my molecular biology final, but really just refreshing my email every 30 seconds like my life depended on it. Because it did. When I saw the subject line, "Congratulations from Penn Medicine," my hand started shaking so badly I could barely click it open. I read the first sentence 3 times before my brain would accept it was real. Then I sat there in the silent library and cried, covering my mouth with my hand so no one would hear. I called my grandmother first. She screamed. Actually screamed with joy, loud enough that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "I knew it," she kept saying. "I always knew, Clara. You're going to be magnificent." Then I called my parents. My mother answered on the 4th ring. "Clara? I'm showing a house, can this wait?" "I got in," I said. "Penn Medicine." I got in. There was a pause. Then, oh. Michael. Michael, pick up the phone." I heard fumbling, then my father's voice. "What's going on?" Clara got into medical school, my mother said, and I could hear something unfamiliar in her voice. Pride, maybe. Or surprise that I'd actually done it. Penn, my father asked. Yes. Another pause. Then, that's a top 5 program. I know. Highly competitive. Yes. Well. He cleared his throat. I suppose you've finally done something worth mentioning. It wasn't "I'm proud of you." It wasn't "Congratulations, sweetheart." But coming from Michael Bennett, it was practically a standing ovation. That night, they took me to dinner. A nice restaurant, the kind with cloth napkins and a wine list. Ivy came too, home from her sophomore year at Oregon State. She wore a tight smile the entire meal and ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. So, medical school, my father said, swirling his scotch. 4 years, then residency. What specialty are you thinking? It was the first time he'd ever asked me about my future. I sat up straighter. Emergency medicine, maybe. I like the fast pace, the variety of cases. Emergency? Ivy interrupted. Isn't that just like trauma and drunk people at 3 a.m.? It's acute care, I said evenly. Critical decision-making, stabilization, diagnostics. Sounds exhausting, she said, examining her nails. I could never do something that intense. But then again, I actually value work-life balance. My mother laughed. Ivy, you sleep until noon. Exactly, Ivy said, smiling sweetly. Self-care. My father raised his glass. To Clara. Maybe you'll make something of yourself after all. I clinked glasses with him and pretended those words didn't have teeth. What I didn't see was the way Ivy watched me across that table. The way her jaw tightened when my father used my name. The way her fingers gripped her fork just a little too hard. I didn't see it then. But later, years later, I would understand that this dinner was the moment my sister decided I needed to be destroyed. The call came 3 weeks after my acceptance letter, on a Tuesday afternoon in April. I was in my apartment, celebrating in the quietest possible way, eating takeout Chinese food and reading through the medical school's course catalog like it was a novel. My phone rang. Grandma Dorothy. I smiled as I answered. Hi, Grandma. Did you get the Penn sweatshirt I sent you? Clara. Her voice was wrong. Thin. Shaky. I need you to come over, sweetheart. Today, if you can. I was in my car in under 2 minutes. She was sitting at her kitchen table when I arrived, still in her bathrobe at 3 in the afternoon. There were papers spread in front of her, medical documents with the letterhead from her oncologist's office. She looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my grandmother's eyes before. Fear. It's pancreatic cancer, she said. Stage 4. They found it on a scan last week after I went in for back pain. They're saying 6 months. Maybe less if it's aggressive. I sat down across from her. My hands were numb. What are the treatment options? Palliative care, mostly. Chemo might buy me a few more weeks, but the quality of life. She shook her head. I'm 76 years old, Clara. I've had a good run. I don't want to spend my last month sick from treatment that won't save me. Grandma. I want to do this at home, she said firmly. Hospice. Dignity. And I want you here. If you're willing. I didn't hesitate. Of course I'm willing. But medical school. I'll defer. 1 year. It's allowed for family medical emergencies. Clara, you've worked so hard. And I'll work hard next year too. I reached across the table and took her hand. You're the only person who's ever believed in me. I'm not leaving you to do this alone. She cried then. So did I. The next morning, I called Penn's admissions office and explained the situation. They were compassionate, professional, and clear. Deferral was standard for circumstances like this. They sent me the paperwork within hours. I filled it out, got my grandmother's oncologist to sign the medical documentation, and submitted everything through the official portal. I saved copies of everything. The deferral approval letter. The medical records. The hospice intake forms. I created a folder on my computer labeled Med School Deferral, Official, and backed it up on 3 different drives. I even told my parents, though I knew better than to expect support. "You're putting your entire future on hold," my mother said over the phone, her voice sharp with disapproval. "For 4 months, maybe 6, I replied. "She has nurses. She has me." My father got on the line. "This is a mistake, Clara. Medical schools don't like gaps in enrollment. It's not a gap. It's a deferral. It's official." He sighed, heavy with disappointment. "Do what you want. You always do." What I didn't know was that Ivy was listening on the extension in their guest room, taking notes. My grandmother died on a Thursday morning in July, 4 months after her diagnosis. I was holding her hand. Her last words were, "You're going to be a wonderful doctor, Clara. Don't let anyone tell you different." The funeral was the following Tuesday. Small, quiet, exactly as she'd wanted. My parents sat in the front pew, stiff and formal in their black suits. They didn't sit next to me. Ivy didn't come at all. She texted that she was too emotionally fragile and was spending the week at her boyfriend's family beach house instead. After the burial, my father shook my hand like I was a colleague. "Well, that's done. When do you start medical school?" "January," I said. My voice sounded hollow even to me. "The spring semester." He nodded once. "Good. Don't waste any more time." That was August. By November, I was living in my grandmother's house, now mine, left to me in her will, packing up her belongings and preparing to move closer to campus. I'd already confirmed my enrollment. I'd already found an apartment near the hospital. I'd already bought my textbooks. The phone call came at 10:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in the kitchen, wrapping my grandmother's china in newspaper, when my father's name lit up my phone. He never called. My stomach twisted before I even answered. "Dad? We know the truth about what you've become, Clara." His voice was ice. Sharp. Final. My heart stopped. "What are you talking about? Don't insult me by lying. Ivy told us everything. The drugs. The failed classes. The fact that you never even enrolled in medical school in the first place." "What?" I was standing now, the phone pressed so hard against my ear it hurt. "Dad, that's not true. None of that is true. I took a deferral to take care of Grandma. I start in January. I can send you the. We've already called the school. They confirmed you're not currently enrolled. Because I'm deferred." My voice cracked. "It's official. I have the paperwork. I can prove." Ivy showed us the photos, Clara. Of you at parties. Looking unwell. The disgust in his voice was a physical thing. "Your mother is devastated. We can't have this in our lives. We have Ivy's reputation to consider. Her future." "Dad, please, just let me explain. We're done. Don't contact us again." The line went dead. I called back immediately. Straight to voicemail. I called my mother. Blocked. I called again. And again. Nothing. I sent an email with my deferral letter attached. It bounced back. I sent a certified letter with copies of everything, the official pen deferral approval, my grandmother's death certificate, the hospice records. It came back 2 weeks later, unopened, marked return to sender. I drove to their house on a Saturday morning. My father opened the door, looked at me like I was a stranger selling something he didn't want, and said, "If you come back here again, I'll call the police." Then he closed the door in my face. I stood on the porch where I'd grown up, where I'd taken first day of school photos, where I'd waited for my grandmother to pick me up countless times, and I couldn't breathe. My sister had erased me. And my parents had let her. My grandmother's house felt like a mausoleum after that phone call. Every room held her presence, her reading glasses on the bedside table, her handwriting on recipe cards in the kitchen, the smell of her lavender soap still lingering in the bathroom. But now it also held my parents' rejection, thick and suffocating in the air. I had 2 months before medical school started. 2 months alone in that house with nothing but silence and grief. I thought about quitting. More than once, I sat on my grandmother's bed and thought, what's the point? The only person who'd ever believed in me was gone. My parents thought I was a drug addict. My sister had destroyed my life and felt nothing. But then I'd remember my grandmother's last words. "You're going to be a wonderful doctor, Clara." So I showed up. January 15, 2019. First day of medical school. I walked into the Perelman School of Medicine with my backpack and my grandmother's stethoscope, the one she'd used for 40 years as a nurse, and I didn't tell a single person that I had no family left. The other students talked about their parents. About who was flying in for white coat ceremony. About family group chats celebrating their acceptance. I smiled and nodded and said my family couldn't make it. I didn't say they'd disowned me. I didn't say I ate dinner alone every night in a dead woman's house. I didn't say I cried myself to sleep most nights and woke up convinced I'd made a terrible mistake. But then I met Dr. Sarah Chen. She was the director of the Emergency Medicine Residency Program, and she gave a guest lecture to our first-year class in March. She was 52, sharp as a scalpel, with gray streaks in her black hair and the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter. She talked about emergency medicine like it was a calling, not a career. After class, I approached her. "Dr. Chen? I'm Clara Bennett. I just wanted to say that lecture was incredible. Emergency medicine is what I want to do." She looked at me, really looked at me, and something in her expression shifted. "Walk with me," she said. We ended up in the hospital cafeteria at 2 a.m. I'd been shadowing in the ER, and she'd just finished a shift. Over terrible coffee, I told her everything. About my grandmother. About the lies. About my parents. About how I was doing all of this completely alone. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You're going to make it, Clara. And I'm going to make sure of it." Dr. Chen became the mentor my parents never were. She checked on me between shifts. She wrote me recommendations. She taught me that strength wasn't about not needing anyone, it was about finding the people who deserved to be needed. And 6 months later, in that same cafeteria at 2 a.m., I met Daniel. He was a surgical resident, exhausted and brilliant, eating cold pizza over a trauma textbook. He looked up, saw me sitting alone, and said, "You look like you could use some company." I smiled. "You look like you need sleep." "Sleep is for people without student loans," he said, and slid into the seat across from me. We talked until sunrise. And for the first time since my grandmother died, I didn't feel alone. I became an attending physician in emergency medicine at Penn Presbyterian Medical Center on July 1, 2024. 5 years of residency. Countless overnight shifts. A wedding that my parents knew nothing about. A life built from scratch with people who chose to love me. Daniel and I bought a small house in West Philadelphia. Dr. Chen became the mother figure I'd lost. My Uncle James, my mother's younger brother, was the only family member who'd never stopped believing me. He'd reached out 2 years after the disownment, horrified when he finally learned what had happened. He walked me down the aisle at my wedding. I didn't think about my parents anymore. Or at least, I'd learned not to. I definitely didn't think about Ivy. Until 2:34 a.m. on a Tuesday in January. I was in the physician's lounge, reviewing charts and drinking my third coffee of the shift. It had been a relatively quiet night, a few chest pains, a laceration, a kidney stone. My resident, Dr. Patel, was handling a minor car accident in Bay 3. Then the overhead speaker crackled to life. Attention emergency department. Trauma level 1, ETA 4 minutes. Multi-vehicle MVC on I-76. Unstable female, 20s, significant chest trauma. Repeat, trauma level 1, ETA 4 minutes. I was on my feet immediately, coffee forgotten. Patel. Trauma alert. Let's move. The ER transformed in seconds. Nurses cleared Bay 1. Respiratory therapy rolled in the ventilator. The trauma team assembled like a well-oiled machine, everyone knew their role, everyone moved with purpose. I pulled on a yellow trauma gown over my scrubs and snapped on gloves. My mind was already running through protocols. Chest trauma. Young female. Probably blunt force from steering wheel impact. Possible hemothorax, pneumothorax, cardiac contusion. We'd need chest x-ray, fast exam, type and cross for blood products. The radio on the wall crackled. The paramedic's voice was tight, professional, urgent. Penn Presby ER, this is Medic 47. Patient is a 23-year-old female, driver of Vehicle 2 in a 3-car MVC. Found unresponsive at scene. GCS 6. Significant chest wall deformity, decreased breath sounds bilaterally. BP 82/54, heart rate 134, O2 sat 88% on high flow. We've got 2 large bore IVs running wide open. ETA 2 minutes. I moved toward the ambulance bay doors. Okay, people, this is going to be a sick one. I want the massive transfusion protocol ready to go. Patel, you're running the code cart. Martinez, you're on airway. I want. The radio crackled again. The paramedic was reading off details for our documentation. Patient name, Bennett, Ivy. Date of birth, April 7, 2001. The world tilted. I stopped moving. Everything stopped moving. The noise of the ER became distant, muffled, like I was underwater. Dr. Patel looked at me. Dr. Bennett? You okay? I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The ambulance bay doors burst open. The stretcher came through fast, paramedics running alongside it, bagging the patient manually. I saw the blonde hair matted with blood first. Then the face. Ivy's face. My sister was dying on a backboard, and I was the attending physician in charge of saving her life. For exactly 3 seconds, I stood frozen. 3 seconds where I wasn't Dr. Clara Bennett, attending physician. I was just Clara, the daughter who'd been erased, staring at the person who'd erased her. Then my training kicked in. Transfer on my count, I heard myself say. 1, 2, 3. We moved Ivy from the ambulance stretcher to our trauma bed in one smooth motion. Her body was limp, broken. The paramedic was still bagging her, forcing oxygen into lungs that weren't working right. What do we have? I asked, my voice steady. Clinical. I was moving on autopilot now, hands already reaching for her neck to check the airway. The paramedic rattled off the report. Found her trapped behind the steering wheel. Prolonged extrication, about 20 minutes. Significant steering wheel deformity. She was unconscious when we arrived. Pupils equal and reactive but sluggish. We've pushed 2 liters of saline en route. Pressure still dropping. I looked at the monitor. Blood pressure 78/50. Heart rate 142. Oxygen saturation 85% and falling. She's circling the drain, Dr. Patel said quietly. Not on my watch. The words came out before I could stop them. Martinez, I need that airway secured now. Patel, get me a fast exam. Someone call for O-negative blood, 6 units to start. The room exploded into controlled chaos. I cut away Ivy's clothes with trauma shears, a designer blouse, expensive jeans, the kind of outfit she'd always worn to look effortlessly perfect. There was a massive bruise blooming across her chest, dark purple spreading like spilled ink. Breath sounds? I asked, stethoscope already on her chest. Absent on the left, diminished on the right, Martinez called out. She's got a pneumothorax, maybe bilateral. Get me a chest tube tray. I looked down at my sister's face. She was 23 now. Still beautiful, even like this. Even unconscious and dying. There was a small scar on her chin from when she'd fallen off her bike at age 7. I'd been the one who'd helped her up, who'd gotten her a band-aid. She'd thanked me then. My hands were shaking. I clenched them into fists, forcing them still. Dr. Bennett? Dr. Patel was looking at me, the ultrasound probe in her hand. Are you okay to run this? No. I wasn't okay. I wanted to walk out of this room. I wanted to let someone else handle this. I wanted to scream at my unconscious sister that she'd ruined my life and now she had the audacity to show up here, broken and bleeding, demanding that I save her. But I didn't do any of those things. I'm fine, I said. Let's see what we're dealing with. Patel ran the fast exam, a quick ultrasound to check for internal bleeding. I watched the screen. My heart sank. Free fluid in Morrison's pouch, Patel said quietly. She's bleeding internally. I looked at the monitor again. Blood pressure 72/48. Ivy was dying. Right here, right now, on my table. And despite everything, despite the lies, the betrayal, the 7 years of silence, I was going to fight like hell to save her. Because I was a doctor first. And doctors don't get to choose who deserves to live. I placed the chest tube myself. Sliced between Ivy's ribs, felt the pop as I entered the pleural space, watched dark blood pour out into the collection chamber. Her oxygen saturation climbed from 85% to 92%. Her blood pressure stayed dangerously low. She needs surgery, I said. She's got a liver laceration, maybe splenic injury. She needs a trauma surgeon now. Dr. Morrison is on his way, the charge nurse said. ETA 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I looked at the monitor. Ivy didn't have 10 minutes. Start the massive transfusion protocol, I ordered. And get me another 2 large-bore IVs. She's bleeding faster than we can replace it. For the next 90 minutes, I didn't think about the past. I thought about hemoglobin levels and coagulation factors and keeping enough pressure in Ivy's circulatory system to perfuse her brain. Dr. Morrison arrived and took her straight to the OR. I gave him the full report in clipped, professional sentences. He looked at me carefully. Do you want to scrub in? Family case? She's not, I stopped. No. I'll wait for updates. It wasn't until Ivy disappeared through the OR doors that I realized my parents must be here. I found them in the surgical waiting area on the 4th floor. It was 4:17 a.m. My mother was pacing, still in her pajamas with a coat thrown over them. My father sat rigid in a plastic chair, staring at nothing. They looked older. 7 years older. My mother's hair was more gray than blonde now. My father's face was lined, heavy. I stood in the doorway in my scrubs, still stained with Ivy's blood. My trauma gown was gone, but I hadn't had time to change. There was blood on my shoes. My mother saw me first. Her eyes went wide. She grabbed my father's arm, grabbed it so hard her knuckles went white. Michael, she whispered. Michael, look. My father looked up. His face went completely blank. Then something flickered across it, confusion, recognition, denial, shock, emotions moving too fast to name. Clara? His voice cracked on my name. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, I said, and my voice came out cold. Professional. The voice I used for families I didn't know. I'm Dr. Bennett, the attending physician who treated your daughter in the emergency department. Dr. Morrison has taken her to surgery to repair internal injuries. He'll update you when. You're a doctor? My mother's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. But Ivy said, she stopped. Looked at my father. Back at me. She said you dropped out. She said you were, she said. She lied. The words came out flat. Hard. I took a leave of absence to care for my grandmother during her cancer treatment. I had official deferral paperwork from Penn Medicine. I started medical school in January 2019, exactly as planned. I completed my residency in 2024. I've been an attending physician here for 7 months. My father stood up slowly. The school said you weren't enrolled when we called. Because I was deferred. Not dropped. Deferred. I tried to tell you. I sent you the paperwork. You returned it unopened. The photos, my mother said desperately. Ivy showed us photos of you at parties, looking exhausted? Looking grief-stricken? Those were taken at Grandma Dorothy's funeral. The funeral you attended. The one where you shook my hand and told me not to waste any more time. My voice was shaking now. She took photos of me grieving and told you I was high. The silence was devastating. 7 years, I said quietly. You believed her for 7 years without question. You blocked my calls. You returned my letters. You threatened to call the police when I came to your house. You missed my residency graduation. You missed my wedding. Your wedding? My mother's voice broke. To Daniel. He's a surgeon. We've been married for 2 years. Uncle James walked me down the aisle. James knew? My father's face was white. My brother knew and didn't tell us? He found out 2 years after you disowned me. He was horrified. He's been the only family I've had. The elevator dinged. We all turned. Uncle James stepped out, and when he saw us all standing there, his expression went grim. I got your text, he said to me. Then he looked at my parents. Michael. Karen. James, did you know about this? My father demanded. Did I know that you disowned your daughter based on lies? Uncle James's voice was sharp. Yes, I found out. Did I try to tell you? Multiple times. You wouldn't listen. He held up a thick folder. But maybe you'll listen to this. He opened it on the waiting room table. Document after document spilled out. My deferral approval letter from Penn Medicine, dated April 2018. My grandmother's death certificate. My medical school transcripts, all A's and B's, dean's list every semester. My residency graduation announcement. My wedding announcement. My hospital credentials showing my position as attending physician. 7 years of proof. 7 years of my life, documented and ignored. My mother picked up the wedding announcement with shaking hands. There was a photo, me and Daniel, happy, in front of the Franklin Institute. Uncle James standing beside us. Oh God, she whispered. Oh God, what did we do? You chose, I said quietly. You chose to believe Ivy without question. You chose to cut me off without letting me defend myself. You chose to miss everything. My father was staring at my hospital ID badge, still clipped to my scrubs. Dr. Clara Bennett, MD Emergency Medicine. Why, he finally asked. Why would Ivy lie about this? Before I could answer, a weak voice came from behind us. Because I was jealous. We all turned. Ivy was being wheeled out of the recovery area in a hospital bed, barely conscious, an oxygen mask on her face. A nurse was pushing her toward a room, but Ivy had clearly heard us. I was jealous, she said again, her voice slurred from anesthesia but clear enough. She got into Penn. Everyone was proud of her. For once, Clara was the one who mattered. And I couldn't stand it. My mother made a sound like she'd been punched. So I lied, Ivy whispered. Her eyes found mine. I'm sorry, Clara. I'm so sorry. Then her eyes rolled back and she was unconscious again. The nurse looked at all of us. She needs to rest. You can visit once she's settled in a room. They wheeled Ivy away. The four of us stood in the waiting area, me, my parents, and Uncle James, surrounded by 7 years of evidence and a confession that came 7 years too late. My mother reached for me. Clara, please. I stepped back. Don't. We made a mistake, my father said. A terrible mistake. But we can fix this. We can. No, I said. You can't fix 7 years. You can't fix missing my wedding. You can't fix the fact that when I needed you most, you threw me away. I looked at both of them. Ivy almost died tonight. I saved her life. I did my job. But that doesn't mean I forgive you. Clara. If you want a relationship with me, it will be on my terms. Therapy. All of us. And you will hear every single thing I have to say about what you did. Every bit of pain. Every lonely night. Every milestone you missed. You will sit there and you will listen. My mother was crying now. My father looked broken. And if you can't do that, I said quietly, then we're done. Permanently. I turned and walked toward the elevator. Uncle James followed me. Behind us, I heard my mother collapse into a chair, sobbing. I didn't look back. 3 months later, I stood on a stage at the Pennsylvania Medical Society's annual conference in a navy dress and heels I wasn't used to wearing, holding a crystal award that caught the light from every angle. The Rising Star in Emergency Medicine Award, the presenter announced, goes to Dr. Clara Bennett for exceptional clinical excellence, innovative trauma protocols, and outstanding dedication to patient care. The ballroom erupted in applause. Daniel was in the front row, beaming. Dr. Sarah Chen was next to him, wiping her eyes. Uncle James gave me a thumbs up. And in the back, because I'd told them they could come, but not where to sit, were my parents. I gave my acceptance speech. I thanked Dr. Chen, who'd believed in me when I had no one. I thanked Daniel, who'd shown me what unconditional love actually looked like. I thanked Uncle James, who'd never stopped fighting for the truth. I didn't mention my parents. I didn't mention Ivy. But after the ceremony, when everyone was mingling over champagne and hors d'oeuvres, my mother approached me carefully, like I was something fragile that might shatter. That was beautiful, Clara, she said. Your speech. You were amazing up there. Thank you. I kept my voice neutral. We've been in therapy, she said quickly. Your father and I together and individually. Dr. Weinstein is helping us understand how we failed you. Good. I meant it. And Ivy wrote something. For the family. She wanted to share it, if you'll allow it. I looked past my mother to where Ivy stood near the wall, thinner than she'd been before the accident, a long scar visible on her collarbone above her dress. She looked nervous. Scared, even. What kind of something? I asked. An apology. A real one. She wants to read it at Sunday dinner. At your house. If you're still willing to host. We'd been doing therapy for 3 months. Dr. Weinstein had made it clear, reconciliation would be slow, boundaried, and entirely on my terms. We'd had exactly 4 supervised sessions as a family. My parents had listened to me talk about the night they disowned me. About the returned letters. About my wedding day without them. About every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone I'd celebrated alone. They'd listened. They'd cried. They'd apologized until the words started to lose meaning. But Ivy hadn't been there. She was doing her own therapy, separate from us, working through why she'd needed to destroy me to feel whole. Sunday dinner, I said slowly. At my house. With rules. Whatever rules you need, my mother said. I looked at Daniel across the room. He saw my expression and came over immediately, sliding his hand into mine. Everything okay? He asked. Sunday dinner, I told him. The whole family. Including Ivy. You sure? No. But I think it's time. Sunday arrived with the kind of bright April sunshine that made everything look deceptively simple. Daniel and I spent the morning cooking roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans, the kind of meal my grandmother used to make. Comfort food. Armor disguised as dinner. Uncle James arrived first, carrying wine and a reassuring smile. "You've got this, kiddo." My parents came next, exactly on time, holding a bouquet of flowers like an offering. My mother hugged me carefully. My father shook Daniel's hand and said, "Thank you for taking care of her." Daniel's response was polite but firm. "She takes care of herself. I just get to be part of it." Ivy was last. She walked slowly up our front steps, still recovering from the surgery that had saved her life. When I opened the door, we stared at each other for a long moment. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi. Thank you for inviting me." "Don't thank me yet. We have rules." We sat around the dining table, the one Daniel and I had bought at an estate sale and refinished ourselves. 4 chairs on one side, 2 on the other. My parents and Ivy on one side. Daniel, Uncle James, and me on the other. The symbolism wasn't subtle. I served the food. We ate in careful, polite conversation. Daniel asked Ivy about her physical therapy. Uncle James told a story about his grandson's baseball game. My mother complimented the potatoes. Then, when the plates were cleared, Ivy pulled out a folded piece of paper from her purse. "I wrote something," she said. Her hands were shaking. "Dr. Weinstein helped me. But the words are mine." She unfolded it carefully and began to read. "I destroyed my sister's life because I couldn't stand that she was better than me at something. Not smarter. Not prettier. Not more loved. Just better at one thing, science, medicine, helping people. And instead of being proud of her, instead of supporting her, I saw her success as my failure." Her voice cracked. She kept reading. "When Clara got into Penn Medicine, I watched our parents celebrate her for the first time in our lives, and I felt like I was disappearing. So I made her disappear instead. I took the one moment when she was vulnerable, when she was caring for our grandmother, showing the kind of compassion I've never had, and I weaponized it. I lied. I manipulated. I fabricated evidence. I convinced our parents that their daughter was a drug addict instead of a medical student." My mother was crying silently. My father's jaw was clenched tight. "I cost Clara 7 years. Her family. Her wedding. Her graduations. Every milestone, every holiday, every moment she needed us. And she spent those 7 years becoming an exceptional doctor anyway. She saved my life when I showed up bleeding in her ER, even though I destroyed hers. She saved me even though I deserved nothing from her." Ivy looked up from the paper, directly at me. "I can't fix what I did. I can't give you back those years. But I can tell the truth now, even though it's 7 years too late. I lied. Clara never dropped out. She never did drugs. She never failed. She was perfect, and I hated her for it, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She folded the paper with shaking hands. "I've sent copies of this to everyone. Aunt Linda. Grandpa Joe. Everyone who believed my lies. They all know the truth now." The silence was heavy. "Thank you," I finally said. "For telling the truth." "It doesn't fix anything," Ivy whispered. "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. But it's a start." My mother reached for my hand across the table. I let her take it, but I didn't squeeze back. "We have therapy again on Wednesday," I said. "All of us. We'll keep going. We'll keep working. But this," I gestured around the table. "This doesn't mean everything is okay. It means I'm willing to try." "That's more than we deserve," my father said, his voice rough. "Yes," I said simply. "It is." We sat there, 6 people around a table, trying to build something new from the wreckage of what had been destroyed. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever, not completely. But it was truth. And after 7 years of lies, truth felt like oxygen. Daniel squeezed my knee under the table. Uncle James raised his water glass. To new beginnings, he said. And to Clara, who never stopped being exactly who she was meant to be. We clinked glasses. Even Ivy. Even my parents. And for the first time in 7 years, I sat at a family dinner table and felt like I could breathe. Outside, the April sun was setting, painting everything gold. Inside, we cleared plates and made coffee and talked about therapy appointments and physical therapy schedules and all the small, boring logistics of trying to rebuild something that had been shattered. It wasn't a happy ending. It was something harder and more honest than that. It was a beginning. On my terms. In my house. With my rules. And that was enough.